the reason that we're focused in this webinar on veterans and first responders is obviously that the mental illness issues affecting veterans and first responders is a significant order of magnitude worse than the mental illness that we see across the general population. All right, now if we can get straight into the big picture with what's happening with mental illness in our community. And these numbers are pre-COVID. And you'll see that on the left-hand side, 1 in 5 Australians suffering from a chronic mental illness. Now, this is no doubt worse now because of the impact of COVID. But even at 1 in 5, it was at alarming levels. In the central column, you'll see, again, pre-COVID, 1 in 8 Australians on antidepressants, which is a number that I have to say, I still struggle with because it's so high. But it gets even worse with older people, 1 in 4. And we're now seeing 1 in 30 younger people, some as young as 4, being on antidepressants. When it comes to veterans, the numbers are much worse. You see there with the general population, 1 in 5. With veterans, it's almost 1 in 2. PTSD almost 3 times as high. Alcohol disorder about 3 times as high. And importantly, comorbidities way, way higher, which makes treatment, as I understand from practitioners, that much more challenging. And you see that last line that there, according to Beyond Blue, a first responder taking their life every 6 weeks on average. Every time I look at this chart, I think the thing that I struggle with most is that our veterans and our first responders are people that we owe a huge debt with as a society. They've been out there, veterans looking after our safety, and first responders as a country, and first responders, they're at the scene of some terrible things, and which most of us would find incredibly confronting, and I'm sure they do as well, but they're actually at the scene. So it's a group of people that we really are indebted to, and it's tragic to see the sort of mental illness levels that you can see in this chart, in this table.
First of all, the number of veterans on our streets and serving members in a cohort in PTSD is about 70 to 90,000. But across our community, we talk in terms of 1.5 to 2 million sufferers. And in our community, I'm talking about our first responders, of course, our AMBOs, our firefighters, the paramedics, across the whole range, emergency services and so on, and our coppers. And I had the privilege of sitting at a round table of police in 2018. And I can tell you that hearing some of their stories and watching them weep as they're telling these stories is very heartrending. The second problem we have in our first responder groups is there's no real reserve capacity. They're expected to be at work on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And to deal with the bad end of our society on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And that's why I feel so very sorry for them. And I think the suicide rate amongst first responders is extraordinary, as it is with our veterans.
Yeah, so I found myself at the end of a 16-year career in the Air Force, struggling with some mental health issues, and it did feel like I'd been, kind of band-aiding up my mental health and trying a lot of avenues within the medical system to try and heal and continue with my career, but nothing seemed to work, and I wasn't able to unfortunately go on with my career. I found myself just in the pits of mental health and just really giving up. I gave up hope.
My patients, probably 70% of my patients are veterans. They have these sets of problems. A percentage of them get better with standard antidepressant treatments, and that's great. a percentage of them don't, and the ones who don't stay with me the longest. But these guys really need something new, and they're dying, and if they're not dying, their relationships are breaking up. They don't get to see their kids. They have stupid family law court problems that go for 10 years, and you know, that they're not employed. It's just a slow rolling disaster. Unless you do something, some more veterans are going to die.
I've worked clinically as a therapist with soldiers and Defence Force personnel quite a lot. My clinical specialisation has been in the area of trauma, and I guess sitting here with you, as someone who sits on the outside of those experiences for first responders and defence personnel, I just want to just name that I feel like it's outrageous. It's outrageous that the clinical evidence of this, to my mind, is clear. Is clear. The MAPS in the United States has just finished their phase 3 trial results, which show nearly 90% of people get marked life improvement from one treatment protocol following a psychedelic-assisted therapy model. Nearly 70% of those people escape diagnostic categories. We're not talking over years. I mean, the average number of years in those trials, those people have been diagnosed for 14 years on average, and the highest was 22 years. We're talking about 22, 23 weeks of treatment. These people are recovering. Under what circumstance and what kind of country and what kind of culture do we send people into harm's way? And then when they break from the pressure of it, because we know clinically that trauma is not a question of if, it's a question of when.
We can go on pretending that we have the treatments that will enable more and more people to go into remission. But if we continue the way we are, with a process-orientated approach from government to dealing with these problems, then it's hard to see that we're going to solve this massive problem. We need innovation in the sector, and particularly in the treatment area. And this is where psychedelic-assisted therapies are showing themselves to be so exciting and providing what should be a paradigm shift in terms of treatment options for people with key classes of mental illness. We're seeing medicinal psilocybin being used for depression and potentially OCD and addiction, and medicinal MDMA being used for PTSD and potentially addiction. And the beauty of these therapies, and I should emphasize that, you know, when we talk about using these medicines, it's very much as an adjunct to psychotherapy. Using these medicines by themselves is not going to, I think, be that helpful. You've got to combine them with therapy. We're only talking about 2 to 3 dose sessions. So rather than year after year on antidepressants, we're talking here about 2 to 3 sessions with the medicines, all done in a medically controlled environment, all done with medical or health practitioners in the room when the dosing sessions happen, to make sure that the patient feels safe and secure. Scaffolded on either side of the medicine dosing sessions with some psychotherapy. As I say, the psychotherapy being integral to the process. These therapies are often referred to as curative rather than palliative. In other words, they're designed for many people to lead to remission rather than management of mental illness. All the evidence says they're very safe in a medically controlled environment, and used in this way, they're not addictive.
When you take a medicine like MDMA, you get 2 things that are really important happen. You get a down regulation of the fear response. So it allows you to approach terrible memories and experiences without being overwhelmed by them like you normally would be. And at the same time, what it does is increase your relationality. So it allows you to move into relationship, to be held and supported and protected as you're going through this experience. And in that in-tuned environment, it allows people to metabolize what has been too difficult for them to experience. It allows them to work it through. So that's the kind of basic mechanism it works by. And so it's not just the medicine itself, but it's the medicine coupled with the therapeutic process. And one of the problems in a conventional talking therapy is it's all up here. So often it sits up here as a cognitivized process. But when we're talking about trauma, it's become very popular now. We understand that it's embedded in the body itself. It's a reactive state within the body. And we have to get that out. We have to work that through. And there's a number of other therapies that you can use in alliance with the medicine to help that occur. And if we're able to do that and then add some key therapeutic points of integration where we stabilize that experience so it doesn't just come and go, but we actually get it to stay, then we're talking about massive changes in people's lives and in their functioning.
So, why aren't these therapies part and parcel of our mental health treatments now? And the tragedy, when you look back historically, is that they were increasingly becoming part of the medical domain in the 60s until Nixon's war on drugs in the late 60s. There were a huge number of patients that went through these treatments, and they were very much seen as the brave new world of psychiatry. Why did Nixon move the way he did? It wasn't based upon any evidence that we've ever been able to find of scientific merit or safety. It was all about the fact that he was facing an anti-war movement in America. The anti-war movement was led by people who were often taking recreational drugs, particularly psychedelics. And by outlawing the psychedelics, he could then move against those leaders and imprison them. So it had nothing to do with safety or efficacy. But the effect of that was to basically stop research for decades and stop or minimize medical use.
And that's where I think the whole idea of a psychedelic-assisted therapies and what's on offer with the work that Mindmeds in Australia is doing is a real game changer. Imagine that you can go from having to take some kind of pill every day that isn't doing you very much good to take 2 or 3 supervised sessions and then be released from the burden, potentially for months on end. Or, to paraphrase Professor Jim Logopoulos, the director of the Thompson Neuroscience Institute on the Sunshine Coast, begin the research and the treatments with a view to getting a cure for PTSD.
And after the first session, I woke up in the morning and I felt renewed. I felt like just a really big relief and a big unburdening of a weight of what I was carrying, and it felt really transformative. And it just, I found myself after a few more sessions and then returning to Australia, talking about it and really wondering why it wasn't available here.
Each death is a tragedy. Each of these people who die is tragic. These people deserve better of us and better of what we do. And we have a clinical tool available. This is not mumbo jumbo. This is not witchcraft. This is not, some out there thing. This is something that's been developed for a long time. We have clear protocols. We are training clinicians in it. We now have about 150, 200 clinicians on the way to being trained. We can help these people. And I want that for those people. And I think that it's deserved. And, I just hope that, every day that this takes is a day that we lose people, and that's not acceptable. It's not okay. And we just have to do better.
And here we are yet again, taking so bloody long to do anything about making these changes so that our qualified people can get on and do the research and the treatment. And it's because if somebody holds up their hand and says no, we somehow think that's more important than the 100 people who say yes. I mean, it's ridiculous. That's the truth. And as you say, there are people out there hurting and hurting badly because we are not enabling them to get all the treatments that they deserve.
We want these therapies to be available wherever the psychiatrist and the patient believes they're appropriate, right across Australia, so that people can access them irrespective of whether they live in capital cities or regional areas. And we want them to be affordable to everybody in the system. That comes to the last comment I want to make, and that is that for our medical system to open up and allow these therapies to be available on a case-by-case basis, we need the medicines to be rescheduled from Schedule 9 of what's called the poison standard, where they're designated as prohibited substances, into Schedule 8, where they're designated controlled medicines. We put in our application in March. There's a critical meeting of the TGA's Medicine Scheduling Committee in June. At the moment, there's a public submission process where members of the public can make submissions about our applications, and we'd love you to, one, look at making submissions if you like what you hear, but two, really spread the word so we can get literally thousands of submissions into the TGA this month to really demonstrate to the government that there's lots of momentum behind these therapies. In terms of that call to action, all you need to do is go onto our website, go to the news tab, and then from there to the TGA tab, and you'll find all the information you need, and including a how-to guide and a link to the TGA submission process. Please get behind this and let's make it happen. And let's get many more people well and out of the system. And even for those who don't go into remission, let's at least get them to the stage where they have far more positive responses and can lead the sort of fruitful lives that we all want them to lead. So with that, I might close, but thank you for being part of this. Hopefully you're inspired to get involved in the submission process. There is real hope on the horizon, but to make it happen, we've got to convince our regulators and our politicians that the time has come. And in my view, the time has truly come, and we've got to go for it. So thank you very much for being part of this.